Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm Anthony Tezak. Joining me here today is your state representative, Ryan Mackenzie, with a legislative update from the district. Representative, thanks for taking some time joining us.
Absolutely, Anthony. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Well, now we're here middle of the summer, working towards the end, but the beginning was pretty successful for House Republicans. Budget was passed early this year and held the line on spending. Can you tell us a little bit about the final package?
Absolutely. Well, the single largest piece of legislation that we take up every year in Pennsylvania is our state budget. The annual budget this year was just under $34 billion. It had no new taxes, and as you mentioned, it was passed on time. So those are the key top line items that were included in the budget. Also, when you look at that breakdown, about 38% of the budget goes for K through 12 education. An additional 5% goes for higher education. So 43% of that $34 billion budget goes for education here in the state. And that's the highest level it's been in Pennsylvania state history. So that's another important thing to note, that we are making those investments in education. Another 37% of the budget is for human services programs, and then that remaining 20% goes for everything else in state government, so environmental protection, criminal justice, etc. So that's kind of the general breakdown of the budget, but again, I think it really showed the focus on our priorities, had new investments in that education sphere for things like workforce development, which are very important, and again, passed on time with no new taxes, and it's a balanced budget, which is also very important for our Commonwealth.
How are the people of your district winners this year in the budget?
Yeah, so again, I think what we're seeing is a reprioritization. So we had great revenues that came in this year, which was fantastic. So we had top line revenues that were growing because the overall economy is growing in our country. So you saw the benefit at the state level of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, reduced regulation, all those things that we hear about at the national level that are helping move the economy and grow the economy. Those things actually trickle down to the state level, because then if there is more economic activity, that means there is more revenue available for the state. So those increased revenues, and coupled with smart budgeting decisions we've made in years past to rein in some of our costs at the state level, those two things led to a much easier budgeting process this year. And so that allowed for more investment in things like education, like I mentioned, workforce development, school safety grants were another high priority in my district. Those things received increased funding in this year's budget. And again, I think that's what a lot of people back in the community were asking for.
I also understand you recently drafted a resolution recognizing special groups soldiers. Can you tell us about the resolution?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our community, we have a lot of veterans that we recognize on a regular basis for their service. We're very thankful for everything they've done for our country. At the same time, there is a certain group who have gone above and beyond the call of duty, put themselves in harm's way, and those are Purple Heart recipients. And so those individuals are recognized on August 7th every year. That's Purple Heart Day. And so here in Pennsylvania, myself and Senator Pat Brown introduced resolutions in the House and the Senate, and we were actually able to get those passed to recognize those individuals here in Pennsylvania. So that's great recognition. We are now actually working to make that a permanent designation in state government, that August 7th would be recognized every year annually for Purple Heart Day. And again, we want to make sure that we recognize those individuals who were injured in the line of duty for their sacrifice, and just show how appreciative we are for everything they've done for our country. So again, recognizing that is important, and we're looking to make that a regular occurrence by making it permanent in state government as we move forward.
It sounds like common sense, and it's great that we're able to honor these recipients of the Purple Heart. What made you determine or decide that this was something that had to be looked at and tackled?
Yeah, so there's a great community of Purple Heart recipients in the Lehigh Valley. They're very active in our community, and so we've talked about this. I've been to their annual event every year where we recognize them at a luncheon. I've done that for years, ever since I've been in office. But at the same time, we had talked about that there is a larger movement going on across the country to recognize Purple Heart recipients. And so we wanted to join in that movement by introducing state legislation, and getting the resolutions passed was the first step. And again, hopefully we'll make that permanent in state law so that it can carry forward. Whether I'm here in office or not, that'll be a designation that would be placed into state law. So we're looking forward to do that. And I think this is also just continues my strong commitment to veterans. We have designated special veterans office hours at our office every month for veterans. They can come in and receive assistance for all types of things, from state government benefits to federal issues with the VA. We can help them with those issues. So if they're interested in that, constituents should just contact our office. They do need to schedule an appointment because those appointments actually get booked up. And so it's important that they reach out to us, and they can come in, get help with VA benefits, pensions, military benefits, getting the proper paperwork like 30D 214 and things like that. So all of those resources are available through our office. Another great program that I'd like to highlight, actually, since we're on the topic, is our Startups for Soldiers program. This is something that I introduced several years ago, and it's now become law, and it's actually working its way through the system. And what it is it's a program that waives the startup filing fees and licensing fees for veterans and active duty reservists actually as well, who are returning from service, coming to Pennsylvania, and looking to start another chapter in their life, either through a new business or a new professional occupation and a license that goes along with that. And we saw that this was successful in Missouri, was the other state that had taken this up. So we've waived those fees. It's a great way to not only, again, recognize and honor our veterans, but also encourage them to come back and settle in Pennsylvania, start a business that'll help employ themselves, but also hopefully grow and employ others as well. And to date, over 3,000 veterans have taken advantage of that program statewide, so we're very excited about that. We're glad they're going to continue that program. And again, that was a piece of legislation that I authored, and so I'm very proud that it's now actually implemented and doing what we wanted it to do.
Back to your office, just briefly, you said you have specific veterans hours. Can you tell us what those hours are?
Yeah, so they change monthly, so I would just recommend that if a veteran or a family member is interested in having help with their benefits or anything related to their military service, they can reach out, and again, we would schedule an appointment with them, but they do occur monthly, and so it's just important that they reach out, and then we'll be able to assist them in scheduling that appointment.
And your contact information will be on the screen in just a moment. However, now we mentioned past the budget, into the summer recess and gearing up for the fall. What are going to be the big priorities for you specifically as we enter the fall session? Yeah,
so every year, in addition to those higher level items such as the budget that are taking place on an annual basis in Harrisburg, I also have my own legislative agenda. And so things on that agenda this year for me include requiring the use of E-Verify for those in the construction industry. That's a very important piece of legislation, I believe, because we've seen and we've heard from both union and non-union stakeholders about unauthorized employees being used across the construction industry. And what that does is it drives down wages, it hurts the fair businesses that are doing the right thing and trying to compete on a level playing field. And finally, if you have unauthorized employees on a job site, they aren't paying the proper taxes, and that's therefore cheating the government out of revenue that they deserve as well to build safety nets like unemployment compensation that everybody ends up using. So again, for all of those three reasons, we want to make sure that everybody in the industry is using only authorized workers. And the way to do that is to use E-Verify, which is a Department of Homeland Security program. It's already in place. It's been up and running for years, works very well. It's voluntary for everybody, and hundreds of thousands of employers already use that program across the country. But we would like to make it mandatory for the construction industry because, again, we've heard about the widespread problems, and there is strong bipartisan support to actually take that up. So that legislation has passed through the House back in the spring. It had a vote of 170 to about 28 or 29, I believe, was the final vote count. So again, strong bipartisan support for that. And again, I think it's a great way that we can crack down on those who are violating our laws. The businesses, in this case, are the ones who are taking advantage of these situations, and again, make the system fairer for everybody involved. So that's something that again, I'm hopeful is going to be taken up in the Senate when we go back into session. Other legislation that I've introduced, things like advanced recycling, is a new topic that came to my attention. We know a lot of us have waste in our communities that you see on the roadsides or it makes its way into the waters. And so we want to find ways that we can actually increase recycling that's being done. And one way that's very exciting, it's new technology. We heard about it in our Energy and Environmental Resources Committee. They talked about advanced recycling. And so what that is in this case is that they can actually break down the chemical composition of plastics and not just recycle it into a new plastic, a recycled plastic. What they can do is they can then take those chemical elements that they were broken down into and reuse it for things like jet fuel. And this is already, it's commercially viable and in the marketplace now, but we need to update our laws that recognizes this new type of recycling so that manufacturers of these products can actually come, collect that waste, and actually use it as a new product such as jet fuel in our ecosystem. So it's a great new technology innovation that we need to catch up with in state government law and make sure that it's recognized. So those are just two of the things that I'm working on, but again, there's a lot of other topics that we'll be hitting on in the fall as well.
Okay, and you mentioned, we have the caucus agenda, and then you have your own personal agenda of legislation that you'd like to see. But going back to the caucus agenda and looking at the budget process over the past 6 months, is the caucus still standing up for taxpayers? Are they still holding the line on spending? Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are top priorities for us. So when I ran for office, the first things that I talked about were protecting taxpayers, creating jobs, reforming government, and improving education. And I believe we've been doing all of those things ever since I've been in office, and we're going to continue to do that. So when it comes to specifically the budget and protecting taxpayers, again, very proud to have not voted for any taxes or fee increases since I've been in office. We were able to carry that out in this most recent budget. And again, things are going very well with the economy still doing well. Revenues are still up in the first couple months of this new year. So I think we're going to be able to continue that trend. And ultimately, we'd love to even be able to reduce taxes. I have some legislation that does that in certain areas where we can actually reduce taxes and actually return some money to our citizens, get that back in the economy, and help that start producing again as well. So those are very important priorities for me. Those are just fundamental beliefs that I hold, and so I'm going to hold to those as I move forward.
And this past budget bill, the bill that was just passed, that also put a deposit into the rainy day fund. First time that's been done in a very long time.
It didn't, and that's correct. That's important to note as well. So we put in about $250 to $300 million into the rainy day fund for the first time in several years, and that was depleted. That fund was totally depleted during the recession. This is basically a savings account for state government, and so we know that at some point there will be economic uncertainty and a potential downturn. We don't see anything right now on the horizon, but at some point in the future that time may come. And we want to make sure that we're in good shape for that when that eventuality does occur. And so again, that's why we're putting money away into the rainy day fund. So if there are shocks in the system going forward, you'll have a cushion there that you can rely on and have a less of an impact on state government.
And I'm sure that is going to be a decision that may have been made this year, but it's going to have ripple effect for a number of years.
Absolutely, and again, as I mentioned before, not only is the economy doing well in helping our budgeting process, but good sound budgeting processes like putting money in a rainy day fund are the things that we've been doing in the past number of years that are helping our situation as well.
All right, Representative Mackenzie, again, thanks for taking your time out to sit down and talk with us, and hopefully we can have you back in the beginning of the fall and see where things stand.
Sounds great. Thanks, Anthony.
That's all the time we have for today's program. If you have any questions about what you've just seen or any other state government related matter, Representative Mackenzie's contact information will be on the screen in just a moment. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time here on Legislative Report.